Hi everyone, welcome back to another video where we analyze whether couples would last on the Netflix show Love is Blind Season 2 based on personality type. So in this video, we are going to analyze the couple Jarrette and Iyanna and the love triangle with Mallory as well. Just a reminder that the general principles of compatibility is that opposites and difference creates chemistry and challenge versus similarity and sameness creates admiration and companionship. So firstly, Jarrette is a ESTP. He's extroverted, fun guy, and very easygoing as well. He's got a tad of earnestness about him, and he does make choices based on what makes sense at the time. So what makes sense? Logic is TI, and at the time, in the moment, is SE. But he can be very playful when he's relaxed and be very personable, and this is explained by his lower extroverted feeling function here. And in this third slot, he'll only use it with people he's comfortable with or if he's in a relaxed state or particularly happy. So Jarrette is paired up with Iyanna, who is an INFP. So as an INFP, she's very introverted, and on the outside she may seem sweet and soft, but she actually has immense inner strength as proven by all the childhood trauma that she's survived. She's also very authentic, very clear about her preferences, values, and what she likes and dislikes. She was very clear early on that she wanted to be with Jarrette and also expresses this openly. And this can be explained by her top two functions. FI is where she is very certain about her values and being very authentic, and the intuitive function, NE, extroverted intuition, makes her quite intuitive and a deep thinker. She's looking into meaning, people's intentions, and the why behind things. One thing that is quite prominent in the blind dates that she goes on with Jarrette is that she does talk about her past a lot and all her traumas, and it holds her back from trusting people and going into relationships. And this might be due to SI function, introverted sensing, which is very reflective of past memories and draws meaning from that. Although with Iyanna, the SI is one of her lower functions, so in the end, she's not going to see that as a priority. If she's in a healthy state, she would go with her feelings and what her intuition tells her. So Jarrette and Iyanna, being these two types, are actually a perfect example of how opposites attract. If you look at their functional stack, you can see here that they do not share a single function, making them completely different. And this tends to create very high chemistry. And when I talk about chemistry, is the type of attraction that blows your mind. You can't stop thinking about them. You feel madly and crazy in love. And even more so with this pairing as well, because they're not the exact what we call shadows of each other. So your shadow would be if you had completely opposite functions and the functions were completely complementary at each level. So for an INFP, that would be an ENFJ, where the top function would be FE to the FI, NI to the NE, etc. Whereas with Jarrette, the functions don't match up completely on the same level, so the SE and the SI are at different levels and quite far apart. FI and FE are as well. So it's going to create this illusion that he is the perfect complementary shadow pair for her, yet he's not quite it, which somehow creates almost like a mirage that you want to know more about this person because he seems to be able to fulfill all your needs, but yet he's so different and never really fulfills your needs either. It's sort of like a bottomless pit of attraction. So because the chemistry is so high, the attraction is really strong, at least initially. But because they are so different, there are many potential clashes. And in this particular couple, an example would be their views on cheating and the rules of monogamy. For example, Iyanna has mentioned that she finds it very hard to trust people and open up. And once she's committed herself into a relationship, she does intentionally break ties with people she's had relationships in the past, versus Jarrette, who logically gives an explanation of why he doesn't like to burn bridges with exes, stating that you never know when you need someone, for example, when you're job hunting, which shows you his logical tendencies. This is a major difference between Jarrette and Iyanna in a wider context, because Iyanna tends to keep a very small social circle and Jarrette keeps a very wide social circle, and they both might become uncomfortable with how the other socially operates. And another issue is Iyanna has trust issues and loyalty is a big thing to her, whereas with Jarrette, not to say that he's disloyal, but because he's an extrovert and he has the functions both SE and FE. So SE lives in the moment. It's a very fun loving function, and FE in this position likes to play. It's very charming when it's relaxed and it relates to everyone. So then it would always, both of these, be responding to whoever's in front of them, and because of that he might appear too flirty for Iyanna's liking. Another issue that these two types might face is they have different definitions of what constitutes cheating, and this is mainly down to their sensing and intuitive functions, so SE versus NE. People who have sensing tend to look at what's tangible. In terms of cheating, it will be about what's actually been done, not about thoughts or intention. Whereas with an intuitive type, they tend to look more at intention and thoughts rather than what actually happened or what's actually been done. For example, Iyanna has mentioned that what she defines as cheating is any kind of cheating, which includes emotional cheating, which means that she is looking into what your intentions are and why you're doing or getting involved with someone else, either physically, emotionally, anything. Whereas with Jarrette, because he is a dominant sensing type, for him it would be all about what he actually did. And this would be a major clash between them as well. So now let's look at Mallory, who is the third leg of this love triangle. So Jarrette claims to also like Mallory as equally as he likes Iyanna, and this might be because he is ESTP, which means firstly that he doesn't have FI, introverted feeling, which is knowing your intrinsic values and preferences, but because also the FE is in the third slot, it means the opposing function FI is actually his blind spot, so he would never really have a personal preference. He would base most of his decisions on logic, whatever makes sense to him. And Mallory is an ENFJ. So as you can see, she and Jarrette shared the exact same functions. So they, as opposed to Iyanna, is a very good example of how similar people can feel attracted as well. Like Jarrette, Mallory as an ENFJ is also very extroverted, fun-loving, and because her FE function is higher than Jarrette's, she is a lot more responsive to other people's feelings, and you can see that when she seems very heartbroken when she rejects Jarrette's proposal, even though she was at the time quite clear that she didn't want to marry Jarrette. And another feature of ENFJ is that with NI, the intuitive function in the second slot, it makes her very wary of what can go wrong in the future. So even though the FE top function makes her quite warm, affectionate, and fun-loving, the NI actually balances that out to make her potentially quite closed off if she senses something might go wrong. So types that are similar, like Mallory and Jarrette, definitely can still feel a deep connection with each other. It's different from chemistry. It's a type of companionship and admiration for each other because you see a bit of yourself in the other person. In Mallory and Jarrette's case, because they're not exactly the same type, it means that they would look up to each other because they have the same functions, but they do certain things slightly better than the other. So for example, Mallory with a lower SE would look up to Jarrette's higher SE, that he's more willing to engage in the sensory experiences and have fun and live in the moment, whereas Jarrette's FE would look up to her higher FE, which is able to relate to people better, be more emotionally intelligent and sensitive. So with this love triangle, I think what happened is that Jarrette initially chose to propose to Mallory first, even though he keeps saying both women are equally ranked in his heart. I think it's because he came into this process deciding that it is time for him to find a life partner because of a life and death situation that he's been through a year ago. And his logic tells him that the function of this life partner is to be by his side, someone who can look after him and keep him company through thick and thin. Although both women can fulfill that need, I think he chose Mallory because Mallory has a lighter energy and is someone who is similar to himself and therefore is better able to look after him. Whereas Iyanna, even though he has great chemistry with, he is aware that she's been through a lot of trauma in the past, and he probably feels that Iyanna is the one that needs looking after. Whereas I think Mallory didn't choose Jarrette because Jarrette is too similar to her previous boyfriends, which obviously have not worked out, and that would trigger her NI function in the second position to worry about things not going well in the long run. And lastly, in this specific pairing where the second function is the same as the other person's last function and vice versa, in the long run there could be potential clashes because the higher function would make the lower function, which is the function that we're most insecure about, it would make it feel very incompetent. So it's a potential clash in the long run. It tends to become a competitive rivalry between these two types in the long run, which you can already feel between Mallory and Jarrette when they first meet face to face. Lastly, we have Sal, who Mallory at first is very sure about. So why is that? Sal is an INFJ, so he's basically the introverted version of Mallory, which is why they have such a deep connection, because they are very similar. He is equally emotionally intelligent, but he has more of a calming presence. And being an introverted, intuitive type, he's way more in his head. The physical realm, which is governed by the sensing function, is not important to him. Because she is so much more similar to Sal than to Jarrette, I think that's why she feels a much deeper connection with Sal. We say opposites attract for a reason because of the high chemistry. And unfortunately with Sal and Mallory, there wouldn't be that much chemistry. It would just be a lot of admiration and companionship, which it's not going to be as exciting as with someone who is different. So thanks so much for watching. If you found this content helpful or educational, please remember to like and leave a comment and subscribe as well. Thank you.